Good morning. So, welcome back to our little urban homestead. And so, we are located in southeast Queensland, just outside of the Redlands Shire, or within the Redlands Shire, or Redlands City, as it's now known, in the Mount Cotton region. So, a lot of the produce that I produce in our gardens, I like to reserve and have started doing some pressure canning of some of our family favourite recipes and been doing a bit of research to ensure that they're shelf stable and trying to use ingredients and recipes which have been proven to be shelf stable recipes. So today, we are going to be tackling some Bolognese sauces, and I'm going to make a beefy pork Bolognese sauce. And I've been out to the garden and grabbed a few items that are still growing for us seasonally, as well as collected some items that I already had on my shelf that I'd prepared earlier for storing while they were in season. And I also have to use some passata, which I had previously purchased as well when we were out of tomatoes. But it's our tomato season just starting again here in southeast Queensland, and so I've got some fresh tomatoes as well from the garden, some of our garlic as well from last year. This is the end of our purple garlic, which is an Australian variety that has the larger cloves, so they'll need to be crushed up as well. Celery, perfect time of year for celery to be growing in the garden, so I've got myself a bowl of that as well. And some tomatoes, some onions that have already been processed from our gardens, some tomato paste that I'd already made, balsamic vinegar, a dry red wine, or we don't drink wine, but I have a white wine that I use in marinade, so I've got that as well. Like I said, I've got pork and beef mince and 10% fat mince, avocado oil. Seasonings are just salt, pepper, and it's pink Himalayan salt, white pepper, black pepper. I like to add a bit of cayenne pepper as well, and some liquid smoke. Because my son eats this, I don't actually eat the meat, the beef sauce, but the family do. And some garlic powder as well, just in case these garlic cloves, which are now 12 months old, don't have enough taste to them, but we'll see how they go when I crush them all up. So the exact amount, I'm making a double batch, but what you would normally use would be about 1.25 kilos of ground beef, about 1 to 1.5 cups of fresh onion, half a cup of carrots, about half a cup of celery, some oregano and some basil, and I've got that already in my Italian passata, so I don't need to add any additional herbs to this. Like I said, half a cup of the red wine, or I'm using a Tassie wine, which is Roaring Forties, and that's just a dry white wine. A couple of tablespoons of balsamic vinegar, and that's a 6% vinegar, which this one is. If you just check at the bottom there, it does say 6% acidity, so the correct vinegar. And that's to ensure it's shelf stable. We then need 1.5 litres in total of tomatoes crushed and sauced. The passata jars are 700 mils, so that's almost the 1.5. And in addition, I'm going to add 400 gram can as well as our own fresh tomatoes. Let's cook off all of the beef and the pork separately. I'm going to do it in 2 batches, and then it's going to get ready to be bottled. Okay, so I've peeled 2 full heads of the purple garlic. I'll put it through the food processor and give it a blitz up with the half a cup or so, or a cup of the fresh cherry tomatoes at the same time, and then get the celery ready while the meat at the moment is cooking on the stove. Okay, all the meat's been cooked. It's 3 kilos of combined beef and pork mince. So it's been cooked until it gets to the point where it's starting to crumble. And then you need to drain it to get rid of all of that extra fat and juices as well. But we're going to keep the juices because we can use that later on. So now it's time to get on to the veggie prep. So I've already minced up my garlic and my tomatoes. I've got my fresh parsley and my celery from the garden, and it's time to put all the veggies together now. So I've moved on to a bigger stock pot, and we're going to fill this up now with all of our veggies, starting with our garlic and our onions, and cooking those down a little bit more, which once they've come out of the cans, because they've already been pressure canned, it's very quick. If you're using fresh onions, obviously you're going to cook them until they're nice and translucent instead. So I've also got some tomato paste there as well, so I'm going to put all of the veggies in together and get those cooking now. Okay, so we've got our onion, garlic, tomato, carrots, and celery just cooking down a little bit just because of the raw garlic, and then we'll add the rest of the ingredients and then season to taste. Okay, just adding a little bit of the white wine in the bottom of each of the passata bottles just to get what's left of the passata out of each of the bottles. So we're ending up with quite a full pot. I think this is an 8-litre pot from memory. The baccarat. So it's got a really heavy base, which is needed. We're going to do a hot pack before we pressure can the jars, which will be for a further hour afterwards. So the flavour does change a little bit during the cooking process, but generally speaking, not very much once we get this hot pack completed. So now it's just time for all the seasoning. So in here I've just got the carrots, the onion, the tomato paste, the garlic, the celery, the passata, which has got the oregano and the basil in it. I've also got a can of fresh tomatoes, some fresh tomato and fresh garlic and onion. So this whole vegetable mix now will just come up to the boil, and that's when I'll start to season it once I have an idea of what we need to do. But generally speaking, it'll be a tablespoon or so of salt, pepper, and the cayenne pepper as well. And I use white pepper and black pepper. A tablespoon of each of those, and usually about a tablespoon of the liquid smoke as well, and then it's usually good to go. If anything, it may be a little bit acidic to taste, and so a little bit of brown sugar just helps that as well, because we are adding a couple of tablespoons of the balsamic vinegar as well to it. So normally 2 tablespoons. I'm doing doubling recipe, so it'll be 4 tablespoons of this is aged balsamic vinegar, so it's quite acidic and thick. So I usually do add another couple of tablespoons just of brown sugar just to sweeten it up a little bit, because I am using my own tomato paste as well as my own fresh tomatoes, which tend to be a little bit more acidic than those that you would purchase in a store if you weren't growing them. But if you're picking up your tomatoes from the store and they're just really ripe, nice sweet tomatoes, then you may not need to add the sugar. Okay, so I've added all my spices. Tablespoon of cayenne, tablespoon of white pepper, tablespoon of black pepper, 4 tablespoons of the balsamic vinegar, as well as a tablespoon of salt. And while this is cooking down for another 15 minutes, I'll get my bottles hot and my pressure canner ready in order to process the next step. Simple, as simple as I could make it. I don't like to fuss around, and I like to do the recording of the videos for my daughter to be able to watch them later on as well. So future me can then talk to my current daughter and show her how to go about making these quick, easy recipes that are shelf stable for as long as they need to be. So after a further 15 or so minutes of cooking time, sauce is starting to reduce a little bit. It's all mixed together and it's well seasoned, so it's time just to add the meat back to the sauce, and then time to fill the jars. Okay, well, that meat has been added now to this beefy Bolognese sauce, and it came to a total of 6.5 litres in total, so you definitely need to have yourself a large enough stock pot in order to do a double recipe. I knew that this was going to be approximately what I needed, which is why I moved away from the smaller stock pots that I was using earlier. So now it's time to fill the jars, wipe the rims down with some vinegar, and then pop the lids on, and then into the pressure canner for 100 minutes we go. Okay, carefully wiping down the rims of every single one, because these are lug lid passata jars from the Salisbury and Co. So they're smaller, about 500 mils, instead of the larger size passata bottles. So these are the perfect size for us. So all been filled, jars have been cleaned around the tops with some vinegar because we're using a beef product, so there potentially could be some oil. So just ensuring all of that's really clean, and lids go on. Okay, so 10 passata bottles on the bottom, and I'm going to double stack because there was enough space in this, which is the Presto. So I have 10 passatas in the bottom. Double stack with a rack. I'm going to put 3 more. These are also pint, so it doesn't affect my jar time. So these are also pint, and they're also Salisbury and Co. They're just the small squat ones. Checked the seals and checked the valve on this one here, which is its safety valve that pops up, so make sure that that's kept on tight. I've checked its flange is all good, and I've checked to make sure through the hole I can see. So it's time to lock the lid in place now, and we're going to bring it up to temperature, and we're going to cook this for, like I said, 100 minutes, and then we're done. Fast forward to the next day, and we end up with lovely shelf-stable beef bolognese sauce that's shelf-stable and just ready to add to pasta, quick and easy meals. Just needs to be heated up in the microwave or on the stove. Easy. Thanks for joining me. Bye. And just a brief note for reference, when we were draining the meat, which is only 10% fat, this is how much fat we've ended up with. This 500ml jar, so it's 250 mils of pure beef fat, or beef and pork fat, and again 250 mils of stock. So this is what we don't want in our jars, which is why we drain our meat, so that the shelf-stable meat sauce doesn't become rancid. So it is an important step not to miss. And that was my tip. Thanks for joining me. Bye now.